Welcome to the Warriors Watch podcast. I am Danny Leroux, your host, and so happy to be with you for this episode. I was not planning on doing something on Warriors-Lakers, even though the Lakers have been more competitive this year, but a super fun 127-123 overtime game inspired it. Lots of things to talk about. Steph Curry's injured hand, the Lakers' defense, the center rotation being very different with David West being out, and the person who I reached out to and was thankfully available to talk, Adam Lauridsen, formerly of the Fast Break blog. I guess what I should introduce him as is Adam Lauridsen, friend of the show, because that is really his main role right now since we are deprived of his blogging. But we talked about the game for about 26 minutes, a lot of the different angles, and I really enjoyed the podcast. I enjoyed the conversation. I hope you do as well. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I did not anticipate recording on this game. Even though there was a possibility it was going to be close, we didn't even know if Steph Curry and or Kevin Durant were going to play in this game. But this was a really fun game. I enjoyed this more than a vast majority of Warriors games, partially because it was competitive, partially because I thought the Lakers played well, and it held my interest in a lot of different kind of ebbs and flows in various points in the game.
Fans have been joking the last couple of days about how it was time for the scheduled loss down in Los Angeles. Seems like the Warriors always have a game that is a dud or the Lakers blow them out when they go down to LA. This definitely wasn't that. It wasn't a perfectly played game, but it was really competitive. There was a high level of basketball being played by the Lakers. And like you said, it was just fun. There were some individual runs. The Durant-Ingram matchup when they went back and forth was really fun. Curry in overtime was great to see him emerge and get some offensive flow going. Bell had his moments. Just an interesting midseason basketball game. Not going to change the course of the season, but good to see the Warriors pushed and to see them answer.
Yeah, and I the way I described it in my player reviews at The Athletic was that, to me, Steph Curry had a 2-star regulation because it's out of 5 stars, and then he had like a 4.5-star overtime because he, in the beginning of the game, you noticed it more, the hand stuff. And while I know some people were talking about it because of his shooting, because he did struggle from the field in that first and actually in regulation, he was 6 for 17, 1 of 7 from 3. But where I noticed it more was with his handle. And there were times I think it was specifically in the first half, where he just lost the ball. And so that's when I knew something was a little bit different. He said afterwards, Ramona Shelburne had this, that he was how to deal with the ring finger on a shooting hand. That was the big problem. And he asked Kobe Bryant for advice. I'm sure Kobe has been through all sorts of those kind of ailments. Got something, and he said he'll adjust from here. But Curry did look off in that way, and that's not meant as an excuse. It's meant as an explanation for what happened, and that did make the Warriors' offense a little bit more disjointed until overtime when he caught fire and hit 3 big shots.
Yeah, the turnovers and the ball handling, I think, disrupted his entire game. He's used to being able to put himself in the position where he wants to be, to probe the defense a little bit. And there were those odd plays where he was just losing the ball, not even really under pressure, but just sort of in the middle of the court as he was initiating the offense, which was really strange to see from him. Not a typical Curry turnover. What was encouraging to me, though, he was clearly frustrated, but he stuck with high percentage shots. He kept penetrating, he kept attacking, he kept trying to make things work. He didn't just settle for long 3-pointers or defer to other people. He stayed engaged, and it really paid off. He found a shot when the Warriors needed it in the overtime period.
Another big difference with this game than a lot of other ones was that the center rotation was actually shifted, and the first shift of that we knew was coming, that David West was not going to play in this game, so they were going to do something different. But then what the other shift ended up being was that they went away from JaVale McGee and went with Jordan Bell in his place. And I thought Bell, he certainly had some of those rookie mistakes. The play that stuck out to me in terms of that was he bit on a Julius Randle pump fake from like 20 feet, and then Randle got into a drive and got a foul. It's like, that's a play that once you get used to the league, like Julius Randle, if that's a pump fake where the best case scenario is that he shoots the shot. And
right.
And so he'll get better at that. And there was a play where he was over exuberant and tried to go for a block instead of boxing out, and Draymond actually talked to him a little bit after after that. And because the player he was supposed to be boxing out, I think it was Brook Lopez, got an offensive rebound and put it back. It might have been Julius Randle, was one of those guys. But overall, I thought that he brought an energy which was valuable for the Warriors. And, there is this idea, which I have said in the past, that in many ways Jordan Bell is a better version of JaVale McGee because he's a little bit more consistent. I also think he has better touch around the rim than JaVale does. He's not as good a dunker, obviously. And I think we saw some of that today.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot to unpack here. The center rotation, I think, is actually the most interesting part of this game, partially because we have to imagine sort of a Warriors without West, which would be like next year potentially, and how would things look? And Bell, if you divide the minutes the way that Kerr did, you give Bell sort of 12 minutes at center, you give 12 to Zaza, you give 12 to Looney or maybe McGee some other night, and then you have Draymond take 12 or a bit more than that. It's an interesting division, and it gives you a bunch of different looks. The thing that I really like about Bell's role right now is there are times where the Warriors defense this season has looked a little slow. And I don't know whether it's just a lack of energy given the early season, a lack of interest or effort. But as soon as Bell hits the court, they're not slow anymore. He accelerates them. He energizes them. It gets them back to that swarming, switching, sort of chaotic feeling that they had at their best defensive moments in the past couple seasons. And the ability to turn that on, I think, is important. And I think we're going to see Kerr go to that more because as he tries to find ways to motivate this team to kind of push the buttons to get them going, Bell seems to be one of the things that energizes them. We saw it in the Sacramento game and we saw it again in the Laker game. That's going to be important. It's a long season, and anything that the Warriors can find to get them kind of revved up and energized is going to be useful.
I want to talk about Looney too, but first, Zaza Pachulia, I don't think this was his best overall game. To me, he deserves a lot of credit for Hassan Whiteside, that game where he basically got Hassan Whiteside out of the game. Then he did a really nice job on DeMarcus Cousins in the game against New Orleans, and we'll see how that matches up when they face each other again, and I think that's next week. But he had his best offensive game to me, where he was fighting for position, did a good job there. I not only got an and one, but was 5 for 5 from the field, and only had one turnover. That turnover was pretty bad. He basically threw a pass when a Laker was in the vicinity, tipped it, and ran the other way. But it followed an idea that I've tried to articulate over time, which is I used to always say passing to Zaza in the paint is a mistake. And I eventually had to hone that to passing to Zaza without a clear path to the basket is a mistake. And I think that was the fundamental difference between this game and some of the other ones, was that he was putting himself in a spot where he was generally keeping his man not between him and the basket, but between maybe him and the ball or something else. And so then that made it an easier finish for him. And like on the end one, it was Brandon Ingram rushing in on the back and hitting him in the face. And I mean, obviously it was early enough in the game that you can't say, well, that's the reason it went to overtime or anything like that. But those things do add up.
Yeah, I think your qualification on when you should pass to Zaza is a good one. If he can just go straight up with it or pause and then go straight up with it, you're in good shape. If he has to do pretty much anything else with it, you're in a rocky territory with him trying to convert. But he's a player who has an extremely strong grasp of his own limits. You rarely see Zaza trying to push the envelope and do something that he's not able to do. And this was just a perfect example of it. He had a really efficient game. He put himself in spots where he could be successful, where he knew that he could contribute. And he does the little stuff. He's a physical presence out there. With a bigger team, a pretty physical team like the Lakers, he's good to just kind of level the playing field to make sure that the Warriors aren't getting knocked around, that they're able to return the favor.
Finally, we should talk about Kevon Looney. I thought Looney was not a strange fit because there wasn't a perfect one in the West role. And the biggest difference that I noticed, and this is not a surprise, is just the difference in offensive capability. I mean, David West, not only can he hit mid-range shots, so that gives those groups more functionality because they have more shooting, but he's just a good passer. And Looney, he's not terrible. He actually had one pretty nice drop pass in this game where he got it in a seam that I didn't think he could do. But he's more of I think of him as kind of like a functionary or a worker bee. And in other circumstances on other teams, I could see that being a more valuable thing. And the Warriors, Kerr loves consistency. He loves execution. And so that's a big part of why Looney still plays and why he plays over Bell sometimes. But what it reminded me is just that unless he's just beasting as a roll man or as an offensive rebounder, I would rather roll the dice with McGee or with Jordan Bell than with Looney, just because those 8, 9, and 10 games are better than like a 6 from Looney.
Yeah, Bell's a defensive game changer for the Warriors, and their offense thrives on the opportunities created by their defense. So for that reason alone, I'd favor Bell in that situation. The point you make about the offensive difference between West and Looney, it's just a confidence in sort of ability to deal with broken situations. Looney can be very good when he's running in a play, when they get him the ball cutting, or when he's just getting an offensive rebound and going back up with it. What has impressed me so much this season with West is he's become a bit like Sean Livingston, where he's an escape valve for them. When the play breaks down, when the ball ends up in somebody's hands with 2 seconds left, if it's David West, if he's anywhere within 18 feet, you don't worry. He's going to find some way to get it up and get a good shot. He makes a lot of them. That's not going to be Looney right now. He just doesn't have the confidence. He doesn't have the offensive skills. So he's going to be a much more system-dependent player, whereas West can deal with whatever's thrown at him and makes the best of a lot of broken situations.
And what's, I think, has been so fascinating over the course of this season and will continue is that there is no reason to expect this center merry-go-round to change anytime soon. That's just what Kerr likes. That it keeps everybody on their toes. It keeps everybody engaged. The only real change would be if Damian Jones ever got in the mix, which would just be so much more chaotic because it would be another guy. We would learn a lot based on who's active and who's inactive. And where that might kick in actually is late in the season, just to give Zaza and West straight nights off, I think could be useful. I think West will probably be happy with this one. And it wasn't a game where they really needed him. It would have been fun to see him play against Julius Randle, though. I would have enjoyed that quite a bit. But that's just going to keep going. And we did see more of Draymond Green at center in this game than we have recently. Again, the Draymond at center lineups did not dominate in this game. The Hamptons 5 actually, I think, ceded some ground in the second quarter. And then I can't remember exactly how it fared in the rest of the game. But I think there are a couple of different reasons for that. One is the defense just hasn't looked as crisp. And some of that is, I think Draymond hasn't looked as good defensively this year. I don't see anything structurally wrong. He doesn't seem, maybe he's a little bit slower right now than he has been at other points, but I don't think he's a step slow. So I want to see that. Then offensively, I think they've just been also a little bit of a victim of circumstance. There have been some times in those lineups where the shots have not been falling. Have you seen anything different than that?
Just mental, for what I can see. They're just not making the smart decisions that they made as a defense in the past couple seasons. They're committing in situations where they don't have to. They're blowing switches in situations where they were usually very smooth. So I agree. I don't think physically there's anything wrong with the team. Maybe they're a little tiny bit slower. They're all a bit older. Or they're just conserving their energy at this point in the season. But they're just not playing with the intelligence on defense that we got used to seeing. And that's concerning. I think some of that is focus, but you don't want them picking up bad habits. The thing with the center rotation that I find interesting, at some point they're going to need to get some chemistry with some of these lineups and find their go-to lineups for when the game's going to be on the line. Obviously, the Hamptons 5 is always going to be the thing that Kerr's going to go to in his time of need, but it would be good to get another one of the centers in there in a position where he can close a game. It's probably David West. We've seen that before from Kerr, but I'd love to see Bell in the mix there in some closing situations just to get him the experience, to help him learn on the job and to understand when he can and cannot sort of overcommit and be the sort of jumping jack around the basket that he likes to be.
Well, and it was good to see him play a little bit in the fourth quarter in this game. He had that really short stint.
Those were good, productive minutes for them, and I think that he's going to need that as the season goes on. If Kerr's going to use this as a grand experiment, like he seems to want to do, you might as well give these young guys some real hardcore minutes with the the other stars and players in there to see if they can be a piece in the future and if they can get some chemistry together.
And something else I want to see more, and I actually originally was going to write one piece on the second unit. It might actually become a 2 or a 3-piece series just because it's one of the real flashpoints with this team, and sometimes there aren't that many things to write about unless you want to talk about Steph Curry's hand for an hour. So but one of the ideas that I've been fixating on a little bit is it's not only about the center, it's about the surrounding talent. And so something that I've enjoyed and I think they should use when they can is Jordan Bell playing with Draymond, because Draymond is a teacher on the floor, and there are no better teachable moments for an NBA player than in a game, because you're facing an opponent that is unpredictable. You're not basically telling them what sets to run, all that kind of stuff. And there's different skill sets, so don't bite on a Julius Randle pump fake. Get over here, don't make the contest. And so I actually really like that. And also because Draymond can help clean up some of the times when Bell's a little bit over aggressive. And so all of those circumstances and figuring out who fits where. And I would love to see David West play other times than when he plays, partially because he's better than the limited role that he has. And it's possible that West just doesn't really feel the need to play more than that. But I don't know. I feel like there are some elements of this that are still untapped, and it could just be the long game that it's still. I mean, as if this season to me has felt long already, but 6 weeks is nothing compared to the remainder of the regular season. So we have time to see it, but there's a lot more that I want to experience and understand with that part of this team.
Yeah, the teaching point for Green and Bell is a really interesting one, because it's a rare situation due to Draymond's versatility where you can put Bell in the Green role as the undersized center and then play Green next to him and teach him on the floor as these things are happening how to play that role. That's an incredible opportunity for a young player like Bell, who seems to be really receptive and a quick learner. So the more they can do that, I think the more it's going to pay off in terms of making Bell a vital piece of the team going forward later this season and in years to come. And your untapped potential point's a really good one too. I think the way they use West right now, it's kind of fallen into a rut. They used him at the beginning of the fourth quarter last season, and it worked well. But they haven't really sort of broken him out of that to see if there can be some more productive minutes from him late. They are struggling in some of these late fourth quarter execution situations. Livingston and West are two guys who are both very good at executing and haven't really been thrown into the mix there and could be useful. On the other end of the age spectrum, I think McCaw and Bell are the two intriguing pieces. They're defensive game changers. They add a lot of energy. They don't hurt you that much offensively. McCaw, in a lot of ways, actually brings some nice things offensively at this point when he's consistent and confident. I think finding ways to put them in meaningful game-deciding situations will pay off later. And we haven't really seen Kerr go to that so far in the way that he's experimenting with his lineups.
One other thing I feel like absolutely has to be a part of the story of this game, and it got lost in the shuffle because he was better in the second half, but the first half of this game was the worst I've seen Iguodala look defensively. And there were a couple plays. Part of it was that they were switching a fair amount, and the Lakers do have some quick guards, especially Jordan Clarkson, but he was getting blown by. He got blown by at least 3 times in that first half. And, we have seen more of the vertical burst from Iguodala. He's had more, I think he's either close to or has already had more dunks this year than last year. I know it's a lot. I don't remember the exact number. But that lateral quickness is a part of it for any perimeter defender. And I want to keep a closer eye on it, but I think that also might be a factor in some of the limitations with the Hamptons 5, because if Iguodala isn't that level of defender, it changes a lot of the structures of that team, especially considering over the years he has become a more reluctant three-point shooter.
Yeah, it's a point that we talked about previously, and it may be an unpopular opinion, and we don't really know what's causing it. But the Hamptons 5 look slower. They look less dominant. And maybe it's effort, maybe it's focus, maybe it's intensity, but maybe it's age. The Warriors as a team always had some difficulty with young, athletic big men. There are a lot of those types of players in the NBA now, and some of them are starting to develop on teams that are going to be in the playoffs. It's not just going to be the slow, sort of older Cavs anymore. There's a new generation coming along. The Warriors, if they're going to keep pace and keep their dominance, can't rely upon the state of the art from 2 or 3 years ago to still be the state of the art today. It's still an amazing lineup. No lineup in basketball has more intelligence, but there are physical limitations that come with age, and they need to figure out how they're going to deal with those.
So this was the first game on a 6-game road trip, which is going to be fascinating for a couple different reasons, just because there's so much variety of opponents. And, fortunately for the Warriors, there really is not much in the way of heavy travel and back-to-backs, but it'll still be a tough trip for them. And I was wondering kind of where you see this going. The next 2 games are going to be against the South Florida teams. They play Orlando on Friday, Miami on Sunday, and then going through New Orleans and Detroit. Detroit is the last game I think could be something worth watching. I actually previewed the whole thing for The Athletic. So 6 games, longest road trip of the season. What are you looking for in the remainder of the trip?
I think these long road trips are actually good for teams at the beginning of the season, particularly a team like the Warriors that has a veteran core, but also some young guys that they're trying to bring in. They're going to spend a lot of time together. It's a chance for them to really have some dedicated, consistent time to talk about things, and not even in a practice sense, but just being around each other, thinking about how they're going to implement stuff, soaking up whatever chemistry they can develop there. It can be a bonding experience. It could be positive. Their health is a concern. They're still a bit banged up, and you want to see them get healthy. And it's tough being banged up on the road. You don't really have as much time to heal. You're not in your natural training environment. So that's a concern. But overall, I think it's a net positive. They're going to be pushed. They're going to be tested. And if they respond well, I think it could be an opportunity for them to really pull together, find a bit of the more intensity and some of the focus that they need, that they've lacked in the first part of the season, and hit their stride here as they approach the middle half of the schedule.
And I'm sure some people are freaking out because their record, they're 16-6. That's not as dominant as this team has been. But we've seen some elements of the early part of the season I would not be that concerned about being a part of the playoffs. I mean, the defensive intensity has definitely waned overall compared to where it was last year, much less the 73-win season. I mean, I think that was the biggest difference beyond Steph Curry going supernova of that 73-win season, was just that they brought it every single night, and it's been a little bit less crisp at this point. That could be age, that could be, as you said before, like just not focusing on the regular season as much. But I think that having these challenges, having different teams that bring different strengths to the table, I think it's more likely to galvanize them and to be like, hey, we like Miami. They lost in Miami last year. Deion Waiters hit that game winner. Maybe they'll get up for that. They'll get up for different players, different teams. And so I'm excited to see how this turns out. And there isn't a marquee game in this. I mean, I guess probably it's Detroit, just because Detroit beat them at Oracle. But I like that. The kind of road games against teams that are good enough to beat you, but not just the battle of the Titans type games. I always really like those. I think those are some of the most fun games of each season.
They're really fun, I think, from our perspective. Having watched hundreds of these games, you get to appreciate sort of the little challenges that are put in front of them. They're also really useful from a coaching perspective. I know Kerr and the Warriors coaching staff single out things in these games, and they say focus on this aspect. Let's not get beaten on the glass against a bigger team. Let's make sure that we value our possessions and not turn the ball over against an aggressive defensive team like Miami, for example. They're going to put those things up, create the little mini challenges, and give the team an opportunity to show what they can do. Right now in the middle of the season, where you're just trying to sort of log the wins, get through it without getting banged up or hurt too badly, and live to fight another day, that's about the best you can hope for.
And something I think that the Warriors should take some solace in is that I don't think anybody on the team had a great day. There were some guys that had good games, and of course Curry had a great overtime. Durant had those 2 ridiculous shots over Brandon Ingram in overtime. And the Lakers played well. This was not just a game where the Warriors' C game beat a bad team's B game. I thought the Lakers played very well overall, and there are reasons for their fans to be optimistic. And they were still able to pull it out. They were 12 of 30 from 3. They missed 7 free throws. They were playing without David West. Curry was obviously not right. They had, I think it was 19 or 20 turnovers, and they were still able to win. And so I think you take that, you appreciate it, and you move forward, and you're happy you got the win. You got a challenge, and I'm more excited about the next Warriors-Lakers game than I expected to be. And I think you have to be good with that.
Yeah, compared to what they've done in Los Angeles in years past, This was an unqualified success.
Yeah, and so the next time they're down there, I was just thinking about this because I'm actually incidentally going to be down there, that's Kobe jersey retirement night. in December, and that is going to be a madhouse for a lot of other reasons, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's good to see the Lakers turn the corner. I think Walton's instituted a good culture. He has his team bought in on his plan.
They're playing so much harder on defense.
Yeah, exactly. They're playing a complete game. They're playing an unselfish game. He's managed to keep their youthful energy going, but still put them a bit under control so they're not just scrambling everywhere. It's a good balance. They have a lot of interesting talent on the team. It still seems like they're one or two pieces away from being a real solid squad, but as a Lakers fan, you have to be optimistic about the future.
Anything else you feel like we need to talk about from this game?
No, just your point about how it feels like the season's already been so long. There's extra 2 weeks of the regular season in October. We're going to feel those all the way through. It does feel like we've been, in the thick of the NBA season for quite a while, and it's just a quarter of the way through.
Well, so and then the other,
go ahead.
The other change for me, I think that's going to shift it is now that the trade deadline is before the All-Star break. I feel like I'm just going to, and the players for the Warriors unfortunately aren't going to get to do this because a lot of them are going to be in LA for the All-Star game. But to really just take that off because it will have been such a longer stretch before that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this season feels when we get to the back half. It already feels long right now, and you never want to wish away an incredible team like this. You want to savor every single game. But the unintended consequence of lengthening the season may be some fan fatigue.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Adam Lauridsen for taking the time to come on. You can follow him on Twitter at GSW Fast Break. That's GSW FASTBREAK. And you can listen to him here. This is the primary place that you can hear. I'm so thrilled that Adam has the time when he does to come on. I enjoy talking with him consistently, and it has been an absolute blast. You can also check out, I wrote a piece, a road trip preview. It was something I did for the first bigger road trip a couple weeks ago, and the response was very good. So Tim Kawakami and the crew at The Athletic asked me to do it again. Did a road trip preview for all 6 games of the trip this time. It is actually the Warriors' longest in terms of number of games road trip of the entire season. So I go through all the teams, and a benefit of doing Dunked On and everything else is that I watch everybody. So it's not just, hey, rattle off a few stats. It's these are the things that you should be watching from what I've seen in the recent past. So you can check that out at The Athletic. Of course, you can also check out my player reviews. I think it's called Every Player. We bounced around the name. That is in the Athletic's app, so it's available for subscribers. And I'm in process doing it now, but by the time most of you listen to this podcast, it will be out in full, going through different things that I saw, and also did this game for the Twitter NBA show with Nate Duncan, and we talked about it on the Dunked On Basketball podcast tonight. We did about 25 minutes or something like that on this game, so you can listen to that. That's more on the Lakers too, for those of you who are interested in the Lakers perspective of this, but this is Warriors Watch, so of course I keep it focused in that way. If you want to support the show, there are a lot of great ways you can do it. You can leave a rating, leave a review in the podcast player of your choosing. You can also subscribe, download every episode. That is a great thing to do for this, because since it is a passion project for me, it is more when I have the time and have the interest in doing it. So that means it is not necessarily a specific thing. You're not going to set your watch to when this podcast comes out. So that's a great way you can do it. And of course, if you have any feedback, good, bad, or indifferent, you can reach out to me. Danny Leroux, NBA @gmail.com is definitely the best way to do that. I promise to read everything. I really, really do. I respond when I can, but that, with my timeline, especially when it's a more complicated ask, sometimes to do that. I'll probably do a mailbag at some point in the near future with this. I'm just trying to figure out the timing with everything else that I do. I want to make sure that, of course, to give it what it deserves. So maybe at some point during the road trip, I'll try to hammer that out, maybe over the weekend. And of course, the other big thing you can do to help me out is you can buy my book, 100 Things Warriors Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. It is available in bookstores. It is available on, Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all that. And I'm doing a signing in Petaluma at Copperfield's Books on Saturday. I think it's at 2 p.m. I don't know the exact time. I will, of course, have that on Twitter and everything like that. So would love to see you there. I've had some really wonderful conversations with people about the book and at signings and things like that. And this is my last scheduled one. I'm pretty confident I'll do more, but it's the last scheduled one as of now. And it's actually a co-signing with a gentleman who wrote a book on the San Francisco Giants. And so be exciting. So we'll both be there, and I presume talking about our books and all that kind of stuff. We're still working out all the logistics with it. So you can do that. You can also check out CLNS Media. They are my partner with this podcast and Real Jam Radio. They do wonderful work. They just launched an awesome new website, so you can check that out as well. And yeah, it's been a fun run. I would say I apologize for taking last week off, but that's okay. It was Thanksgiving and there was a lot going on. So thank you so much for listening. Take care and make it a great day.